George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Well, we got a good brother in the house today. Deric Gilliard is an author. He's a speaker. He's a historian. He has spent some time in federal government. We'll get just where he spent his time in federal government. But the book we're going to talk about is entitled The Longest 4 Years of My Life. And this is inside the Trump administration. And Deric's got a whole lot of pedigree around work that he's done, not only in this work, but also in civil rights. He's working on another book around the Freedom Riders. He's done so much to keep us informed. And I'm really curious about this longest 4 years of your life, Deric. But one more really important thing. He's a proud member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Let's get that. All right. We want to make sure we understand that. But the reason why I was really happy to be connected to you and to get you on is because so many people, Deric, right now are apprehensive, if you will. They feel anxiety about what to expect come January 21st, right? Right? Because January 20th is going to come, but January 21st is what a lot of people are concerned about. So let's talk a little bit about your background and how you came to do the work that you do as a speaker, a communications expert, as a strategist, working all over this country.
Absolutely. So my undergraduate degree is in journalism, and so I have done a good bit of that. I wrote for USA Today their first 10 years. I did some writing as a stringer for Time magazine. Actually, they asked me to go cover Jesse's first run for president. Now, I didn't do it. That's a whole nother story. But so I have, so that's kind of my background as a communications person, particularly in as a writer. Did other things. The Atlanta Daily World, the oldest Black daily newspaper in the country. I spent about 4 years as an editor there. I covered the Atlanta missing and murdered children's crisis when Maynard Jackson implemented the 20% minority set aside, which is the first time it had been done, I believe, in a major city, but certainly in a major city in the South. So making sure that Black businesses, Black vendors got their share.
And that was that on the airport, or is that with city contracts as well?
It was city contracts as well. Yeah. Yeah. And so things like that got to, cover all kind of things, the Olympics, the Atlanta Olympics, et cetera, et cetera. But, and also I worked for Dr. King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I was a communications director under Dr. Joseph Lowery. And I'll remind people at the end of President Obama's first inauguration, they wheeled him out in the wheelchair and he did the benediction. And so because he was one of the first of the main old guard Black leaders to endorse him, because all of them were lining up behind Hillary Clinton.
That's right. That's right.
She had earned it, so to speak. And he and C.T. Vivian were kind of separate in their doing that. He did a lot of campaigning, and so that's how that happened. And when my oldest son in his senior year of high school started to have seizures, and we didn't know why. He wasn't taking drugs, didn't get hit in the head, nothing. And so, like a lot of small organizations, the SCLC covered me with health insurance, but not my family. So I had to go get a real job. So when Dr. Lowery left, I went looking, and the only time I ever got a job out of a newspaper ad was when this white liberal nurse at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who managed the 8 southeastern states and reported directly to the secretary, said that she thought her office needed to more accurately reflect the people we served in the 8 southeastern states, which of course are the overall the poorest, You got the stroke belt, the diabetes belt. It's the blackest region in the country. It's the lowest economic, the one with the most illiteracy, and so that kind of started my journey. And that was under Clinton in '98, and I stayed through 2022. So the first 2 years of the Biden administration.
Mm.
And during that period of time, though, of course, as soon as Donald Trump took office, it was very quickly apparent to me that this was going to be something different than anything I'd ever experienced. So it was kind of put on my heart to start chronicling everything that I went through and saw and experienced. And there was so much. I mean, to me, there was never a president, certainly in our lifetimes, that was so divisive. I mean, he was othering everybody, right? Latinos were rapists and thieves. The Asian flu and the China virus.
Hmm.
He had this thing against certainly women and certainly women of color, right? The Squad, he was after them
Right, right,
like
right.
white on rice. And black led cities, he called them, they were slums and rat infested. He just there's nothing good to say about any immigrants, anybody that honestly weren't white men. And so we actually served, we had the only all black office of the 10 regional offices in the country. And so when we heard him, in fact, frequently, as he demonized, in my opinion, demonized the immigrant community, it made me think about our community because there wasn't that much difference except that we were brought over here. They're
Right,
trying to get over here to escape, poverty, gang violence, try to have a better life. But,
right, right.
and we're seeing, babies washing up on the shore of the Rio Grande and they're tucked in their dad's shirt because, trying to do anything to get over to a better life. And we know that, for example, you've heard him recently probably talk about how he saved Obamacare.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what a
yeah.
lie! Come
Spent
on,
spent spent his whole presidency trying to overturn it.
he did. It's all kind of resources. I'm gonna tell you something. This is crazy a story, but and I was at the tip of the spear of exposing that, and it wasn't purposeful because I wasn't trying to get fired. But
Right, right.
so I every year I would take a tour from the very top of Mississippi, just over the border in Memphis into Tennessee, and you go to like 5 or 6 cities all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Now, the
Mhm.
people in Mississippi would plan that, so of the state's federally qualified health centers, that they're led by somebody who partnered with somebody from an organization called MHAP, Mississippi Health Advocacy Program. So they're both all focused on helping the least of these, because that's the people who really needed help in terms of enrolling for Obamacare, the ACA, because most of them were not really computer literate. A lot of them didn't trust, the government, and for, you know, real reasons we know historically. And so I was waiting, and of course they were calling the ACA everything but Satan's spawn, right? It was just the worst thing since sliced bread, and it was terrible, and they were just lobbing bombs at it, and so, but they still hadn't told us what our role was going to be, because of course 7 of our 8 states in the Southeast were all Republican led, dominated, would not expand Medicaid. So, they said if you want Medicaid expanded in this state, the feds are going to have to go in and do that. You're going to have to build the networks. You're going to have to create the partners, all that, because we're not helping you. In fact, a lot of times they did everything to keep it from happening. So when they finally told us that we were not, for the first year in 5 years, going to be out there supporting the ACA, went into my boss, who was a ardent Trump person, because every time administration changes, you
Yeah,
you
right.
know you
And
you, you got to dance that dance.
and you were a career public
I'm a career
servant.
person. That's right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So you were protected, although they have plans about that, but
That's right. That's right. We'll
they do
talk
not.
about that in a minute, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So,
Yeah,
so
and so yeah, so I went into the appointee, the first Trump appointee. She was a blonde congresswoman named Renee Elmers out of North Carolina. She was a fierce Trump advocate and
mhm,
attack dog. But even she said, "Look, we had 5 years to replace and repeal, and we didn't do it. So yeah, we should be out supporting the people." But I went into her and I said, "Well, I got to tell these people that we're not coming in 2 weeks to do this tour, right?" And she says, "Yeah, you got to." So I prayed, went home, prayed on it, wrote the email, went back, showed it to her. She says, "Yeah, send it." I send it. They call me back and they said, "Well, what do you mean you're not coming, Deric?" And so by then I'm being especially careful about my words, right?
right,
Because I
right,
I know how this is gonna go. And I said, well, and I said, dear friends in email, because I built these relationships with these people. And then so when I told the lady that, yeah, we just can't do it. And then she says, and then 2 days later, I get this newsletter and it says, HHS abandons Mississippians.
mm,
And so, you know what I said? I said, oh, excrement, right? Then I go in, show it to her. So we know we want to call DC, our handlers, to let them know. We don't want it to hear anywhere else. We don't want to tell them either. But
mhm,
so we call them the personnel director and the head of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, who we work for up there, and all the regional directors report to. They get us on the phone, and this black lady who is the personnel director at HHS, and I don't think she felt good about this, but she asked me. She says, "Well, why did you feel the need to write this email?" So I'm sitting here, I'm stewing, I'm trying to remain cool, but being very guarded in what I say. I says, "Well," and I says, "Well, would you have preferred we just didn't show up?"
mhm,
And so they says, "Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have ASPA, our Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, write an apology that you're going to send to them. Okay, tomorrow you're going to get this. And I also want you to go home. I want you to write an explanation of why you all thought it was important to continue doing this work in Mississippi." And of course, I went home, wrote this extensive thing. All they said was thank you, which I knew, for doing it. And there's every reason in the world to do it, right? But do you think I've ever got that thing that they wanted me to send the apology? No, because
no.
they didn't want to put it in writing. That was the
So,
problem.
so in you described this as the longest 4 years of your life, and you in the summary you say that this is a characteristic of the racial, ethnic, gender discrimination, if you will, that's practiced by this individual. At least they try to. In fact, you say that he wanted to uh, basically rule by supporting white nationalist ideology,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I
So
do
no,
believe that.
right, no surprise there. I guess I would say no surprise there because we saw the evidence of that.
Yes.
So here's what I want to ask you: why was it the longest 4 years of your life?
So for one reason, um, I was in my early 60s, I think at the time, early to mid 60s. I was not a social media person. Okay.
Hmm.
People of my age, we didn't grow up doing that, right?
Right.
Trump's mode of communication was Twitter, right? So I had to learn to tweet. And this is the other thing about our region. So I had a colleague, a black colleague, who's a journalist out of Denver. And
Hmm.
when she saw Trump was getting elected, she said, "I'm out. I'm gone." So instead of me having 4 states to manage, I had 8, which of course, and all the other regions had 2 people, 2 of me. So it was just
Right.
me.
Right. Right.
So every day he was tweeting something else that was, he liked to keep people off balance. I think that was one of the things that's his strategy. And I think we're going to see that on steroids this time. So it was like every morning, and I'm a late night person, George. That's just kind of when I operate, when I write and everything else. But I'm in the bed, and subconsciously about 4:30, I'm groping over on the nightstand for my phone because I'm looking to see what has he tweeted tonight that I'm gonna have to respond to and react to tomorrow.
Right,
And that
right.
was one reason. I didn't get any sleep. He always was, and again, with us being the only all black office, everything, the justice marches in particular, like he wanted to frame them about being about the flag and patriotism. And we know it was about over policing an unarmed black man. And yet he continued and continued. And yet we know how many mass shootings there were during his, because he empowered and encouraged these things by the baser instincts of white nationalists. He brought them out, and he
Yeah.
he did so unapologetically, right? And I mean, so that was one of those were the reasons that it was such a long period of my life. And then, everybody that, again, that wasn't a white male, was under the gun with him.
Which is so. Given that, I mean, we didn't have your book before this election, and we did, well, or it was around the same time, I guess. Why did people elect him again? What is your
You know,
belief? What is your theory about? And some of us, right,
absolutely,
with
absolutely.
all of the things that you point out in your book around the racism and the misogyny, and such and so forth. How was it that not only did he win, but win convincingly? And though there are some who say, did he really? But that's a whole another story.
Well, when you finally look at it, though, he had 49.8%. Kamala had 48 point something percent. So he didn't even win half 50% of the vote, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't nearly as lopsided. All the states were, but and that's a whole nother system. I don't know why we just don't have, you know,
Popular vote.
popular vote, right? I think that people want to say that he's stupid, he's ignorant. He is not either of those. He is not a learned man, but he's brilliant. He's like a serpent. He has the ability to convince people. And to be perfectly honest, and a lot of these people are unlearned people, right? They're
Right,
they're the working class.
right, right, right.
And I mean, he tells them things like they believe he got them the stimulus check. We know
Right.
that Pelosi fought for that stimulus check, and he fought against it, but he held it up to put his name on it. But if he tells people that, guess what? They
Can't
believe it,
believe it.
right? I think, and he cost 300,000 lives at least on his denial of the reality of COVID. It's just going to disappear, and people
Give people bleach or whatever it
well,
was.
yeah, all of that. And so I think that, and also he inherited that very robust economy. He didn't build that economy. And people are gonna wait till they see what happens when these tariffs start to hit, right? And it's gonna be heck. And if we deport all these people that he wants to deport, right? Who's gonna harvest our fields, our grapes,
Mhm.
our oranges, our, who's gonna do all that? Who's gonna do all of our lawns and do all of our renovation? These are the people who do this, and they do so actually very cheaply, and they support the economy because they pay taxes, and most of them are saving money to send home to people. And so I think that he just people, and then the question is 4 years from now, uh, we still got to make sure he leaves, right? Because he's not going to leave on his own.
Well,
He
he
didn't
has to
last
leave. Well,
time.
that unless they right. We think he's going to leave, but but
He
his
didn't want to leave because we had guardrails in place last
yeah,
time. We don't
yeah.
have those guardrails, and
No, we
he
don't.
won't allow those this time. So I don't know.
So, Derek, what do you want people to? What don't we know that you're going to tell us? Because these are facts, right? What you're telling us is all the things that we know. But what are some of the things that we don't know? Because I guess my thing is they
Yes,
elected him knowing all the things that
yes,
they know,
yes. That's
right?
right. That's right.
So what are you going to tell us that's going to be maybe not as surprising? I mean, you did one thing you did give him credit for is you said he ain't stupid. He's
No.
brilliant in the way that he's, or as Farrakhan would say, wickedly brilliant.
Yeah,
We won't
yeah,
go there,
yeah, yeah,
right? Right?
yeah. I'll make this prediction. And in terms of, so he's got this anti-vaxxer,
Yeah.
Kennedy, right?
Right. Right.
Who is
Right.
wanted to take over Health and Human Services, never taken a single class. He's not an epidemiologist. He's not a doctor. He has no training or background. So number one, you can expect um, a lot of these things like uh, polio will probably reappear. You're going to take the chlorine out of the water. Where they've done that in several cities, there have been many, many lawsuits by
You mean
parents because
fluoride?
they're fluoride. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
what did
Yeah.
I say?
That's okay. Fluoride.
Yeah,
Hmm.
fluoride, taking the fluoride out of the water. It's caused many cases of oral oral decay where we had not had that.
Hmm.
Polio is something that we have essentially eradicated in this country. I think that you're going to find within 2 years, I bet by next year, you're going to have COVID isn't gone, right? It's going to
No.
continue to reinvent itself, new streams of it, and we're going to have to deal with that because they're gonna let people make their own decisions on that. And the problem is that the vulnerable are too often our people. The people who park cars, who do hair, who, stock groceries, who work in meat processing plants, and all these kind of places where, and many times these are people who are uninsured, and they don't really have the choice. And so to me, I think he makes these people expendable
Mm.
because they really don't count in the long scheme of things. You've heard him say that he's going to, if anybody that invests $1 billion, any of the requirements about the environment, anything to do with the EPA, anything that prevents, it doesn't matter, like if you're in Cancer Alley where, all those people who had these premature births, people died prematurely and all this cancer. That doesn't matter if you're bringing enough dollars to the table. That's what's going to
They
happen. At
don't
least
care.
9 people in his cabinet or his appointees are part authors of Project 2025. And so they've already told us what they're going to do. They've given us the playbook, even though he wants to deny he, knows these people. He does know them, and he has signed off on that.
And we touched on Deric Gilliard, by the way, the author of The Longest 4 Years of My Life, a view from the field as a black
Black Fed in the
Fed
Trump
in the
administration.
Trump
Yeah,
administration. I couldn't reading
that's
your
all right.
book as a black Fed in the Trump administration. You know, you as a career public servant, I know that part of, I guess it's Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. They want
Yes,
to something about government efficiency and really
yes,
look at the civil service system for career employees and really look at upending that in
yes.
some way. They may or may not be able to do it, but they're certainly looking at all of that as under the guise of efficiency. What's your take on that?
So, I've done a couple of podcasts recently with white podcasters, and one thought that that was fine because he's saying, I said, listen, you already have to, as a federal employee, make a pledge of allegiance to the Constitution,
Right.
to the flag.
Hmm.
You're telling me that instead I should make it to Donald J. Trump, to a person?
Right.
And so that is, I mean, that's the essence of being a career person. Whoever's policies you're working for, I did my best to carry out the policies under the Trump administration. I did because that was my job. Did I hold my nose and do it? Yes. Did I I'd send things to journalists sometimes, and they would call me. And this never happened to anybody else's administration. Is as controversial as the Obama administration was, I never once got a call from somebody who says, "I'm not printing this crap." A Republican in North Georgia called me and said, "Don't ever send me this stuff again." She says, "I'm a Republican. You know this is a lie, and I know it's a lie. If you send me something else again, I'm going to put you on the spam list." And so, to me personally, I couldn't say this to her, but I was excited that she said that and felt that and put it out there.
Hmm.
And so it was constantly that. What did Kellyanne Conroy said? Alternative facts. And what
Alternative
the hell
facts.
are alternative facts? Come on, they're lies. That's what they are.
Right.
And so it was so the things that I would do, I would say this. So I tell you about the issue with my trip to Mississippi.
Hmm.
2 days later, the head of that organization, MHAP, that was planning the trip, he's a Native American guy. He's on Ari Melber on MSNBC. My
Hmm.
email is up on the screen, okay? And his teaser for his show was Mississippi official exposes how uh, the Trump administration is sabotaging the ACA. So, of course, I see my name on that at the bottom of that email. So,
Hmm.
I'm saying, oh,
Here
excrement,
we
because I know
go.
the stuff is about to hit the fan. So,
Right.
again, we had to call. So, we couldn't do any of the things we would do. Like every week, I would have a call with my key markets, whether it was in Charleston, in Birmingham, Miami, and I would have all of the key people at HHS for Centers for
Hmm.
Medicare and Medicaid, Administration for Children, all those people that had a role in the Affordable Care Act on the phone to answer the questions of the navigators or the people with the federally qualified health centers who were doing the enrollment. They
Right.
were out working with the people. And if they ran into a glitch, these people could get it fixed for them or get them an answer. So we couldn't have any of those calls anymore. And people, they all felt abandoned is what they did. And there were some that blamed me. And then I even had a coworker, George, who said this. She was at CMS. She says CMS was the one that funded the navigators. And they would send newsletters out. We were supposed to send out every week to all of these assistants. She said, I'm not sending anything out. I got 2 kids at home who like to eat. Now I still sent them out now because I said, no, can they really fire me for sending out their materials on something that's still the law of the land? So I pushed the envelope as much as I could push it without, I thought, getting fired.
But
Uh,
and I guess the point is you worked under various presidents, but did you ever feel like, I mean, you did your job dutifully because that's what you're sworn to do, but did you ever feel like you're selling your soul?
you know what? A relative of mine asked me that. Did I feel that? And you know what I felt like? Um, there was one thing I really was very happy I didn't do, and I'll say that in a minute. But this is what I felt like. I felt like I was part of the remnant. If
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying, I was one of those people who was left behind to kind of stand watch on the wall, to do what I
Hmm.
could do to hold, you know,
Interesting way to look at it. In other words,
yeah,
if I'm here, if I'm not here, imagine what might be going out.
exactly,
I'm doing.
exactly,
I gotta still send some stuff out, but at least I'm sort of a gatekeeper to the extent that I can be, right? Because somebody
exactly.
else has got to say, "Go ahead," right?
Yeah,
Understand?
yeah. I heard from a lot of those people over the years who said, listen, I know you're in an untenable position. We thank you for it because we know you're doing everything you can do to help us,
So,
which
so
wasn't much, but it was
right.
something.
So, how did you answer the question about how you felt about your soul and whether you were selling it or not?
Yeah, I, I, I said that, I felt like I was a subversive witness. In other words, I was doing what I could do under the circumstances. It's almost like, let me give you this example. During the civil rights movement, a lot of the people who are cooks and maids and kept kids, they would hear things, and they would bring them back to to the leaders of the civil rights movement. They
Right.
were ears and eyes on the inside. They were doing what they had to do to support Jim Crow and that racist system, but at the same time, when they were helping their people covertly, and that's what I felt like.
Yeah. I mean, there's a book that reminds me of that kind of thing, but I don't know if I want to say the title of it. But
You're not talking about the spook who sat by the
there
door,
you
are you?
go.
I have a picture. I took a picture with that book actually.
So
Ironically.
you will say, you're honored to be in that category, right?
Yeah,
Because you feel
absolutely.
like that's the work that you're doing
Yeah, absolutely.
out here in these
Absolutely.
streets.
And I'll tell you this will mess you up, George. So I am an evangelical Christian.
Mm.
Now, I'm not one of those, of course.
Right, right,
That which he calls suckers and losers.
right.
And so uh but so for me, one of the other things that we did is we were dispatched, e- each of our 10 regional offices
This is through
had
Health
to,
and Human Services.
through
Yeah.
Health and Human Services, were sent to some of these UACs, unaccompanied children's centers, where
And
they had separated the children from the
right,
parents.
right, at the
So,
border, right?
yeah, exactly. So, as Health and Human Services, we didn't do that, but we were still responsible for the care of those children,
Right.
and which I was ashamed of, quite honestly, sometimes, but
Hmm.
because that was a role, and I didn't want to go, and I had actually vulnerable people at my house, and that was one assignment I wanted no part of. Now, somebody in my office, our executive officer, went, and it was a real experience. But so there were some things that were, to me, were I think were shameful, that I had a problem with, and so I couldn't speak my truth then, but I can speak it now.
I know that's right. What would you say is what? So, since you are evangelical
Hmm.
Christian, and you
Yeah,
believe in the power of prayer and all that,
yeah, yes.
and so many of what those, I mean, you're not those evangelicals, but because to me, to vote for him as an evangelical is like the ultimate hypocrisy. What
Absolutely,
what you say
absolutely.
is, if
I
you
agree
say,
with you
right, you
100%.
say you stand for this and you voted for that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
What's your so we know who he is, we know what he is, and I guess what I'm saying is maybe this is a conversation we need to have. Maybe we need to go back to the conversations we used to have to be to how do we resist this thing? You feel me? Because the potential for the thing, because they're coming, their policies are coming,
That's right.
and
That's right. Better strap on, right? We better be
right,
ready, get
right,
ready.
right, right. And so, I guess from your perspective, are you suggesting to all the rest of us do what we can wherever we can, as how much we can in the spaces that we can? Because I am not for all the wailing and the woe is me,
Yeah, yeah.
because I've said this to others. We have been in other times in this country and we did some remarkable things in the worst times in our history. So I'm
Yes.
not trying to give it up like
That's right.
that.
That's
You
right.
feel me?
That's
Like I'm
right.
just not trying to give it up like that. And so I'm just asking anybody who would listen and who may have a word, since you a man of faith, let's give us a word
You
for
know,
for these
I,
times.
this is, I truly believe this. A couple things I believe. I think that many people our age, and I can tell I'm a little older than you, right? But
But
I
not
think we
much.
we I think we failed our children.
Hmm.
I really believe that,
Yeah.
because I think that too many of our children don't think it's important to vote. I can get with you not believing in the system. I can
Right.
get with that because the system is jacked up. But
Right.
listen, while the system is jacked up, while you creating whatever you creating on the side, you get your
Hmm.
butt into that voting booth and
Right.
vote,
Right.
because
Right.
too many people died, sacrificed,
Too
were
many.
demeaned
Mm.
to get you this right to vote, for you not it's like in our schools, if you're sitting them there and you're putting down the kid that's trying to learn because he's trying to be white, so to speak, that, because
Right.
guess what,
What the heck does
you
that mean?
yeah, what does that mean? And so I do really really believe that, yeah, Doge, I mean Doge, that entity that is not even a federal entity that Musk and Ramaswamy are supposed to be heading up. Because Musk is telling us Americans going to feel the pain. You're going to feel a
Right.
lot of pain. And so I think that unfortunately, it's like if you put a frog in a pot of cool water and you turn it on the stove, right? By the time he realizes it's hot, he's paralyzed. He can't jump out. I think a people that fails to remember their history is doomed to repeat it. And I think that we have gotten to the place where we're going to have to take these backward steps to wake us up. Because I think we as a people are
Well,
not woke.
when you say backward steps, what you mean?
I mean that, so he wants to really impact our rights
Right.
and our liberties. And I
Hmm.
think that he doesn't care about us. It's really clear. He says that. He even says that at his rallies. I don't know if you've ever heard him say it. He says, listen, I don't care about you. I care about your vote. He said that at a rally.
Right.
Speaking to the VFW in Kansas City when he was campaigning, he said this: don't believe your lying eyes. Listen to what I say. I'm saying, and people actually do this. So I just think that he's going to make it so uncomfortable for us that it's going to help us remember that freedom isn't free and this battle is not over. It's what is it? Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. You
Mm.
got to always stay on that wall. You can never relax, especially as a black person in this country. Because when things started to change for us, in the creation of the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, a couple things. One is we could not do it just as black people, right? It had to be a broad coalition. Now, we
Coalition.
have a broad coalition now, but I think honestly, white women to a large extent abandoned us in this election, even though their own rights are being challenged. And certainly the Latinos did, but the Asians, so I'm saying, and a lot of that is these people wanting to identify with being white people. Honestly, you know what I'm saying? They nobody comes over to America to be like black Americans, you know,
Mm.
even though we have so many luminaries in this country that we can name them, but the ideal American is a white American, and that's who they see, and that's who they um, want to be. And so they tend to vote like these people that they want to be like, even to the detriment of their own communities. When you think about the Latino communities, when this deportation comes, I don't know if it's realistic for them to do what he said he wants to do on day one. But my God, we're going to see a lot of examples of that.
And
And so I don't know why people vote against their own best interests. We ran into that all the time around the Affordable Care Act. We'd have people who would drive 2 counties over from where they lived to sign up for the ACA.
yeah,
And they,
and he'll spend 4 years on a concept of a plan. But I
that's
tell
it.
you, speaking of 4 years, it was the longest 4 years of your life. A View from the Field by a black Fed in the Trump administration. Deric Gilliard is our guest. Deric, how do people get a copy of the book?
Absolutely. You can go on Amazon, but if you want to know a little more about me, my name, put in DERIC, Deric Gilliard, GILLIARD.com. And maybe George can link that, on the website. But yeah, and that way you'll see more about my first book was about 20 of the unsung heroes and sheroes from Dr. King's movement, people we should know about but don't. And they're from all over the country, black,
No,
white, young, old, men, women,
go ahead.
who did much to
Like the people, the unsung heroes, right?
absolutely. That's
Right, right,
exactly who
right.
they were. Yep. And you mentioned my other project. I am certainly working as a consultant with the creation of the National Parks national monument in Anniston, Alabama, where in 1961 the Freedom Riders bus was firebombed. And so there's going to be this national park there that's developed in honor of all the Freedom Riders. And so I'm really into this. Justice is in my DNA. And so I wrote my book from three perspectives: as a Black man, a justice advocate, and as a Christian. And so, yeah, please check me out. And if you're looking for a speaker, you're having an event, hook a brother up.
Hook a brother up. Deric Gilliard, DericGilliard.com. The name of the book is The Longest 4 Years of My Life. A View from the Field by a Black Fed in the Trump administration. Brother Gilliard, so glad to have you aboard, and we wish you much success.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you, sir.
Inspiration for the Nation.